Chapnick, president of the local summit, and we're going to go around and identify everyone who's here. I'd like you to identify yourself by organization. If you're with an organization, the new members of the summit, I'd like you to identify yourself too as a new board member of the summit, and even former, old, current board members of the summit. I'd like you to identify yourself as well. Let's start around. I don't know that we can do it this way. Let's try.
No, you can't. I don't think that'll go out.
It won't. Okay, just stand up.
Iris Free, Hope Community.
That would be positions to social responsibility.
I'm Jeffrey Weiner, Hispanic Resource Center in Suffolk.
Marlene Colbert, trustee in the Village of Larchmont.
Ann McCambridge, new member of the summit.
Lynn Reichstadt at Home on the Sound and Summit, and I left at most of your places with Rod's help information about Mamaroneck shares, which will take place this summer.
Bob, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Bob Hayden, Summit, and volunteered at home.
Rob Waldman, Center for Asian Place.
John Bradley at Home on the Sound.
Great.
Mary Marriage, former president, so happy to salute our true special soul president. Member of the Summit and Women's Club, and today also for Judy Dubroff of Cancer Support Team. These are the Swim Across America things I promised I would announce that. Anybody who knows anyone who might do this is a wonderful summer adventure for a great cause.
Jeremy Ingman, Westonville has one.
Amy Ross, Westchester Jewish Community Services Parent Child Home Program. Kay Francis Richards, Mamaroneck Larchmont Human Rights Committee and the Summit. Susan Ehrlich, Kemper Park and Women's Club.
Gail Dallas, Hispanic Resource Center, and I am in your heart.
Stella Markey from the Mamaroneck Health Center. Doreen Michelle, Summit. Teddy Becker, Summit at Home on the Sound. And the Friends of the Larchmont Library.
Hi, Luis Quiroz, was the original Summit when it first started. I'm a social worker, and recently I just published a book on social work in county.
Harold?
Harold Wilson, local summit.
Gary Sleeper, Emmy Lou Sleeper's youngest and most favorite son. And she sends you all her best from Vermont.
Patrons with Sound and Sound.
I'm Randy Robinowitz, I'm the Village of Mamaroneck Democratic Chair.
Carrie Cosenzo, I'm with the Larchmont Chamber of Commerce, Vice President. I'm with the BDIC, also in Larchmont, and I run Ann Taylor in Larchmont.
Oh, great.
Oh, Gary. From Rosenblum, Mayor Village. All right.
I'm John Irving with the Larchmont Avenue Church.
Great.
Janet Buckbinder with the Radar Coalition and the Summit.
Ernie O'Meara, Councilman, Town of Mamaroneck.
Catherine Carter at Home on the Sound. Lorraine Walsh, trustee, Village of Larchmont.
Heidi Sickles, Rhinebeck Board of Education and Local Summit.
And secretary. Secretary. Yes. Okay. We have, just as a reminder, we have increased our cost of the breakfast to $8 so that we won't run short. We've been running short for the last couple of years, and we decided that we needed to make sure that we would cover all our costs. So we beg you to at least contribute $8 for your breakfast today. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming. This is our last meeting of the school year. We sort of keep to the school year calendar, and we won't meet again until the third Tuesday in September. And we think it's appropriate that this last meeting of our year is the summing up. And it's a kind of summing up of our where we stand in our community in terms of the economy and what we're happening. So I'm going to turn the meeting over actually to Sabrina Fiddleman, who's going to give you the overview and introduce her.
Hi, if this is too loud or too soft, you'll tell me, Jeremy, please. Thank you. Anyway, that was a pretty good overview. This is a meeting we've had on occasion at the end of each year to sum up We have an incredibly knowledgeable panel with us today, and I just want to give you a little brief introduction to each of the panel members. We've asked each to speak for about 5 minutes so that we have plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end of the panel, and we're hoping that we can do just that. Our first speaker today will be Steve Josephson. He's the president of the Mamaroneck Chamber of Commerce, the owner of Toy Box, and he's been in the community since 1995 or 96. So he has a pretty broad view of what's going on in town. Jane Elkindini has lived here for over 20 years. Jane, say hi. She's currently the deputy mayor of the village of Larchmont and a real estate attorney practicing here in town. And today she's here as the liaison from the village board to the business community. Melinda Lehman is the president of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Hunger Task Force, which many of you know is the food pantry. She's been at the helm of the food pantry since 2009, and she's been a volunteer there since 2007, and she's lived in the community for 15 years. Rich Slingerland is going to join us, I hope, at some point. He's the village manager in the village of Mamaroneck. Ah, he's outside? Okay. He's been in our village for nearly 3 years and in Pelham for 7 years before that. So he's the resident expert today on the issues facing the local municipalities. Jenny Anderson is a mortgage consultant at Julia B. Fee Sotheby's, which is an affiliate of Wells Fargo Home Mortgage, and she's the resident expert in the local mortgage market. Jim Whittemore, say hi, is a lifetime resident of Larchmont, a graduate of Mamaroneck High School, so he's been in town for, a little while. He began his career in a family brokerage, which he subsequently bought. He merged with Burbank Associates and became a longtime business partner of the Summit's own Emmy Lou Sleeper, who is not here today. We will miss her, but she'll be back in September. She's vacationing in Vermont, lucky lady. Anyway, through a couple of additional mergers and sales, he's now vice president and manager of the Larchmont office of Sotheby's International. And Carrie Sleeper, who is modestly sitting in our audience, will be speaking also with Jim. Also, as he said, a lifetime resident of Larchmont, and I can't give him a better introduction than he gave himself. So we're happy to have him. Anyway, we'd like to begin this morning. Morning, Rich. We'd like to begin with Steve, and I'm going to hand the mic over to him. Thank you. Hang on to it. Stand, whatever's easiest for you.
Good morning, Steve Josephson, from President of the Chamber of Mamaroneck. Mamaroneck continues to grow regardless of the economic conditions. Last year, the number of members we had was 119, and this year we're growing. We're at 137. We have 23 brand new members. Businesses continue to open and thrive in Mamaroneck, and Mamaroneck Chamber continues to offer most bang for their buck. The Chamber keeps the pace with our growing community by offering its members always increasing events, programs, and services. This year we added our most successful wine trail. We had over 180 people. We had 2 trolleys servicing the community. This year we're expanding on our 54th annual golf outing, which is September 26th. Anybody that's interested, please contact me or Pam at the Chamber. Expanding the Halloween Spooktacular from just window painting 2 years ago to an all-day event. We're planning window painting. We're going to have hopefully a parade. We will close down Mamaroneck Avenue from about 2 o'clock until 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. We're going to have the Halloween Spectacular, which was the haunted house we started last year with Sunny. And we're discussing possibly doing some kind of theatrical in the evening. The Chamber continues to give back to the community for 2010. We're growing to do 2011. Last year we did an Adopt a Family. The money collected was directly given back to Mamaroneck families in need through the CAP centers, as we did in 2007 after the floods, and in 2009 producing a Mamaroneck information booklet. Our newest program is Discount Prescriptions Card, which will be made available to all community members at no cost to them. These are just a few of the Chamber's benefits that we have to offer. The Mamaroneck Chamber of Commerce will continue to grow with our community as we have done since 1917. Our local merchant is, we shop local, dine local, and hire local.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And
You're welcome.
Jane, would you like to take the mic next?
Sorry, you guys, but it's really impossible to hear in the back of the room without it, so I hope
Can you
bear
hear
with
me?
us.
No, I can't read
Listen, Carrie.
I'm trying.
Everybody's a commissioner.
Is that better?
No.
You have to talk a little louder.
I'm happy to report that the temperature of the business community in Larchmont is much better than it was a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago, vacant stores were the headline. When anyone spoke of the business district, there was a sense of panic. At that time, there was a meeting of local residents, officials, and business owners to brainstorm. At that meeting, our mayor declared that improving the business district was a top priority of his administration. He reconstituted the Business District Improvement Committee with local residents, business members, and village officials. I lead that committee. Among other things, we created positive press for the community. We hold ribbon cuttings celebrating each new business when it opens and commemorations for anniversaries of established businesses. Already this year, we celebrated the 65th birthday of Anderson's Bookstore, Vision is Tomorrow and Mancino's 25th anniversary, and Angel Nail's 10. In September, we're going to commemorate the 20th anniversary of Wendy G. The members of the BDIC walked through the business district on 4 consecutive Sundays. Every time we noted the condition of each storefront. Then we compiled a list of steps that could be taken at little or no cost to improve the appearance of storefronts. Such steps included cleaning and repairing awnings, clearing the clutter of signs from windows, cleaning windows, and addressing safety issues. We've helped stores navigate through the opening process, we're reviewing local codes to streamline them, and we're creating a database that will enhance communication with the stores. The village also works with groups of merchants on large festivals like Bastille Day and Oktoberfest. These street parties brought the whole community together around the business district and fostered a spirit of pride and excitement in our village. Each event also benefited a local charity. Groups of merchants also worked together on other smaller events. In April, there was an event benefiting Haircuts for Hope held at Vintage 1891, the wine bar in the village. Food, beverage, and prizes were also provided by local businesses. Ladies' Night at Tequila Sunrise was sponsored by Tequila Sunrise, Vision of Tomorrow, and a local jeweler. The event was packed and everyone had a great time. There is a new chamber board and the chamber is sponsoring events too. The chamber recently sponsored Larchmont's first restaurant week. The event brought people into restaurants all week. It was time to kick off the Larchmont Historical Society's annual house tour, and it also raised money for the Larchmont Mamaroneck Hunger Task Force. The Chamber sponsored an event every weekend in December in the business district for the holiday season. The merchants themselves are changing as well. They're tailoring their merchandise to reflect the economy. For example, I spoke to the owner of one of the wine stores in town who works hard to find a selection of moderately priced wines with a little compromise in quality. Now there are online newspapers and blogs that report on a regular basis the events in the business district, further enhancing a sense of our community. There is now much more of a feeling in the business district that we're all in this together. There's a spirit of cooperation among merchants, the chamber, and the village. And of course, the residents understand the importance of shopping locally to support the local stores. Since that first brainstorming meeting, there's a new vibrancy in the business district. 19 new stores have opened, and 11 stores have either expanded or relocated within the village, far more than have closed. It is clear now that Larchmont is open for business.
Thank you. And Melinda? We're going to... Thanks, Jane. Melinda, leave it.
So, is that okay?
You're good.
Okay. So I'm the president of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Hunger Task Force, which probably most of you know of as the food pantry. We are an all-volunteer organization that gives out bags of groceries to local residents in need 2 times every month. We think of our community as so affluent, but the truth of the matter is that each time that we are open, we serve over 1,100 people. We have 650 families who are registered with the food pantry who live in either Larchmont or Mamaroneck and are living below the federal poverty guidelines. Our clients come from a variety of ethnic backgrounds. 1/3 of the people that we feed are children. We feed over 150 senior citizens, 50 of which are homebound and get their food delivered by our volunteers. Most of our clients are employed with low wages. Others live on Social Security disability, or public assistance. And after paying rent, utilities, and medical costs, most families just don't have enough money to spend on food at the end of the month. So some of our clients come to get food only a few times a year, but we have over 250 families who depend on the food pantry as a regular source of their household's food. 10 years ago, our numbers were really difficult to predict. Some years they went up, some years they went down. But the devastating floods of 2007 resulted in a large increase of the local residents who needed food, and that year the pantry served more people than ever before. Then with the turn of the economy in 2008, we had still more clients. We served about 18% more families than we did in 2007, and in 2009 we again saw a huge jump. We fed, again, 21% more than we had the previous year. So according to our statistics, those 3 years our community was really hit hard. But in 2010, things really seemed to even out a bit. They didn't get better, but we did still have a jump in our client, but we didn't have as big a rise in the number of people that we feed. So things seem to be leveling off a bit. This year their numbers are pretty much flat, so we seem to have plateaued. Every year we're open, we do have new families that are registering with us, so the fact that our numbers are constant maybe suggests that people our old clients are either getting employed or are leaving the area. We just don't know how to explain that one. But the other side of what I'm seeing is community involvement. Being president of the food pantry has been incredibly uplifting because I see what a caring community we live in. Because we're 100% volunteer, we rely on people just donating their time for us to be able to run, and we have had no trouble filling our shifts. We have several shifts, anything from unloading a truck to packing bags to delivering groceries, and all those shifts have been filled. We have volunteers as young as elementary school children, and we had a bunch of volunteers that we just celebrated their 80th birthday. So really we could find something for anyone to do, and it's been wonderful that people are coming and doing it. Our local schools, our local teams, many of our local businesses, like the Chamber of Commerce, they've all gotten involved in running food drives from us or raising money for us. Many local churches and temples also have just stable places where people can regularly come and donate food, and they do come and drop off donations on a regular basis. So that part has been really wonderful. In terms of our funding, we're a grassroots organization that relies on community donations. We're obviously very concerned about what would happen to us with what was going on in the economy, but we have just been stunned by the community outpouring. In fact, in 2000 and 2008 and 2009, our overall donations increased. We didn't have as many single people giving us really big numbers, but we had more people giving us just $25, $50, and those, for an organization like us, where over 90% of our operating costs go to food, those numbers really add up and really make a difference. So we feel incredibly well supported, and we're feeling that we are really able to meet the future, whatever it holds, and continue supplying food.
Thank you. Rich, you haven't had a cup of coffee yet, right?
I'm ready.
Okay. Rich Slingerland.
Thank you. I spoke to the finance officers for the village of Larchmont and the village of Mamaroneck. I also spoke to the town administrator, Steve Altieri, for the town of Mamaroneck. In terms of how our local government and economies are doing, what I call the big five revenues, certainly sales tax has been up, but it's based on per capita. So as much as our local communities or downtowns are doing great, it goes by the region. And the region's doing slightly better, I think about 3 or 4% better than last year, so that's an improvement. But you know, it's not rewarding us as good as our actual local downtowns and businesses are doing. But in turn, if and when, you know, since economies and local success of local economies goes in waves, if we do have downturns, that's softened by the fact that we're part of the Westchester region, which is always pretty strong. Mortgage taxes, we're actually seeing, and I confirmed this with some of the other communities, a 30% drop from December to June. So that's a huge drop. As much as things had gone up, houses really aren't selling right now, and people aren't refinancing because the rates are already low. Building permits on par or slightly up, the same for the towns and all the villages. So we are seeing an improvement in local construction. Interest income is basically flat to nominal. We're $38 million. What's that? We're a $30 million annual budget, and our interest income has got to be, you know, maybe $100,000. You know, in a better economy with better interest rates, we'd be getting a lot more. Parking meters, we have seen a drop. Believe it or not, it's as much as businesses are doing well. I think most of the business we're seeing may actually be coming at night. Certainly, the restaurant businesses are thriving in Mamaroneck. So our parking meters are not in effect after 6 o'clock, and we don't see the revenue. Larchmont, I don't believe, has meters, and I'm not sure if the town has much, if any, parking meters. Tax refunds at certiorari. Larchmont has actually seen them a little bit higher, about $500,000 this past year. Mamaroneck Village is on par based on our size. We're about $1 million this past year. So as part of the adopted budget for this year, the village tripled our funding for tax refunds. Mamaroneck Town has already spent their budget of about $350,000 for the first 6 months of the year. So they're looking at, if the trend continues, they're going to be looking at about $700,000 for the year. We haven't seen a lot of foreclosures. That's actually true across the board. But unfortunately, some of the ones that are languishing or homes that are stale, you'll drive past and you'll see a house with foot-high grass or crumbling front steps. We've got the infamous house on Orienta Avenue. That's a constant problem. We just had that tagged and given a posted violation over the weekend. We'd love to see something happen, but unfortunately, because of the fact that there's multiple mortgages and liens on the property, it hasn't been able to get straightened out, and someone who wanted to buy it, I think more than one persons or entities who wanted to buy it weren't successful, so it continues to sit. More bounce checks than in the past? No. We actually haven't seen a lot of that. I think everybody's cautious about what they're doing, and in fact the village is looking, the village of Mamaroneck, I'm not sure about the town or the village of Larchmont, but we're looking to start accepting credit cards for payment of taxes. So for those people who want to increase their miles or their benefits through your credit card. But of course, you know, everybody should keep in mind that using your credit card does come with a fee. So,
Discount for cash?
what's that?
Discount for cash?
Well, the fee goes to the bank, not to the villages, so we do have to make our tax roll. So, let's see. With regard to vacancies, the Larchmont, we got a report from the village of Larchmont. It sounds like they're doing well. The village of Mamaroneck is, as everybody knows, things are filling up fast. Unfortunately, there's a couple of key properties that have been languishing for lack of parking. And so we do have certain areas that during the day there's not enough parking, and they haven't been able to meet the need for getting a tenant in to serve the business. A couple of the key properties are the Manicelis building, which is at the corner of Mamaroneck Avenue and Mount Pleasant. That's languished for more than a year, if not 2. I'm not sure about the exact address, but it's right across from Village Hall. There's a nice 3-story loft building. That's languished also, I think, because of lack of parking. How extensive are the local home foreclosures? Again, not as bad as the rest of the country, but we do have some key properties that I think are starting to compound. Can the village of Mamaroneck and the other communities continue the present level of services? Now, I know the town has had layoffs and cutbacks. I'm not sure about the village of Larchmont. The Village of Mamaroneck has layoffs and cutbacks mostly through attrition. We might have had 1 or 2 people who were laid off or retired, but we're keeping the same level of service, I would have to say, but the speed with which we provide those services is probably going to diminish, because in some departments we cut as much as 10% of our workforce.
Wow.
Are dark storefronts increasing or decreasing? In the Village of Mamaroneck, they're not increasing, but again, the key buildings and the parking are an issue. What's the situation with less affluent residents? In terms of how people are paying for things, the 3 communities are pretty much the same. Tax collections are staying steady, so we would have to say that everybody's staying on an even keel, but as long as the economy stays even, everybody will stay even. If we see a huge sharp increase in something like gas or home heating oil or things like that, that could skew the economy, the local economies back down. What's happening to home and commercial property prices? Based on what we've seen, they've dropped about 25% below their peak. The realtors can answer the question better, but we expect the prices will stay flat for quite a while, if not several years. And finally, people in Westchester select their homes and communities based on the schools, and the houses that come up for sale, especially some of the very expensive ones in the 7-figure range, are selling. So that, to me, means our local economies are doing all right.
Thank you. Jenny?
Okay.
Carol Merrill.
Carol Merrill.
Remember Carol Merrill?
Merrill, of course. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. I don't think I need it that close. Hi. I'm so happy to follow. This is Steve, right at the end? Is it Steve that just spoke? I'm so happy to. Rich. I knew it was Rich. Okay, Rich. Because they asked me specifically to speak about short sales and foreclosures, and I said I don't want to talk about that. That's all negative, and he did it for me. So, how many foreclosures do you think occurred in May in the Mamaroneck School District? How many? Just a guess.
5.
One. We are not Teflon here in this area, but we definitely have come out of this relatively unscathed compared to the rest of Westchester and compared to the rest of New York and compared to the nation. There were 7 short sales so far this year in the Mamaroneck School District. What a short sale means is that properties have been sold for less than what the owners owed on the property, and that number is really negligible when you look at the crisis that's occurring in this country. So there's good news. There's very good news. I also like that Rich mentioned about the drop in mortgage tax, which is what you pay, that lovely 1.05% that you pay on every dollar borrowed. And there are several reasons for that. He's right about the refinance. We're not seeing as much. People who were going to refinance, a lot of them already have. But with the purchases, there are a couple of things. One, we're seeing bigger down payments. So the mortgages that are being taken out are actually smaller. So that's another reason for the drop in that mortgage tax. But I'm kind of veering off course here, so let me get back on. All right. So as far as the foreclosures are concerned, I do want to mention one thing, is that we are seeing a dip in foreclosures right now, even nationwide. And there's a reason for that. The government has stepped in with the banks and said, you have not documented things properly. You're not taking care of these things properly. So we're going to halt a lot of these actions, or at least stall them a little bit. So we are going to see a dip, and we may see at the fourth quarter we may see foreclosures going up a little bit. But I don't think our area is going to be as affected. Now, let's talk about what's actually moving, because there are properties moving and people are buying. We're still seeing Wall Street. It's still alive and kicking. And there's a new segment of buyers that I'm focusing on anyway with my business, and they are called the millennials. You all familiar with the millennials? No? Born after 1982. These are the next group of people who are going to be buying in our community. And they are they're exhibiting a lot better credit worthiness. They're exhibiting a better savings pattern. They have more money to put down. And some of the figures that have been thrown out there is that they say that there are almost 6 million more people in this millennial group than the baby boomers who were purchasing homes in 1977. So this is really going to be the focus. And you know, this is a great area to raise kids. And people want to come back. Kids who have gone off to school, they're coming back. Either they or their spouses have grown up here, and they're buying. You know, the little Larchmont starter home at 1.2 million. And so what happened though over the last couple of years and how it's affecting our area, you know those two people, you've heard of them, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You guys all know who they are? Yeah. So before a few years ago, whether you were buying a house in Topeka, Kansas, or whether you were buying a house in Larchmont, New York, the max loan amount you could get at a really good rate was $417,000. Right? So the government stepped in when all this mortgage crisis started happening and said in high-cost areas, we're going to increase where you can get a good rate. We're going to give you a high-cost loan amount, which in Westchester County is $729,750. So what that did is it enabled people to get really good 30-year fixed rates and be able to buy homes in our areas. What's happening now is in a couple months here, probably beginning October 1st, Congress is talking about repealing that, and we're going to see it go back down to probably a $625,500 loan amount for the high-cost areas. I don't see it as having a big impact on our area because what else is going on is the credit market's loosening up a little bit. We're seeing home equity lines coming back into the marketplace, and so people will still be able to get the good rates on their first mortgage and be able to get a second mortgage to make up that difference. Down payments we're seeing in the higher end, people are coming in with 30 and 40% down. So there's still money out there. I mean, it's still moving. So also, one of the things, you're hearing a lot of negativity in the press, especially about this cutting of the high-cost loan amounts. But what I believe and what I'm starting to see already is that we're going to see the private sector coming back in with money. You know, people are always going to want to buy houses. They're always going to need mortgages. And, you know, the government's going to step out of it a little bit. We're going to see the private sector come in. It's going to be a transition. But I don't think it's a negative for our area at all. I think things are very positive. We are seeing things moving when they're, and I'll let Jim speak to that. But, all in all, it's a pretty healthy market. We are definitely seeing lenders starting to loosen up a little bit. And I'm seeing people getting mortgages, so, yeah. Is that good? Woohoo! All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim. Yes? All right.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. I just want to let you know it was the class of 1965 from Mamaroneck High School. In case anybody in the room I went to school with here. The real estate market in 5 minutes. I was reading an article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, and I know long ago the old adage was, when you're buying a home, there's 3 of the most important things. And we all know that was location, location, location. There's a little twist right now. It's called jobs, jobs, jobs. And that's what they were talking about. I don't really use a microphone at the office meetings, but I'll get this out. But let's remember one thing. When you read a lot of articles in the newspaper, real estate is local. And we're not living in Detroit, we're not living in Miami, and we're not living in San Francisco. So when you see a lot of these articles, they really are about the nation. We are local. So let's talk right now about our Larchmont Mamaroneck area and the numbers that we have. Here are some of the statistics that I went through yesterday. In 2009, I just want to remind everybody, in Larchmont Mamaroneck, we had 160 sales, and that was in 2009. In 2010, it jumped up 47%, we had 236. Now that was a 2009 to 2010, and I'll discuss 2011 and what's been going on in the first 6 months in a moment. At the same time, I want to remind everybody that
we're doing far better than most of the country and the upper part of Westchester County, which is very, very flat, up in the Chappaqua area in Bedford. It's very, very slow, so is Greenwich and other areas. We're doing actually very well. When you talk about the median sale price, we had in 2009, it was $882,000. In 2010, it was $992. It was about a 12% increase. Now, let's keep in mind also, not here as being doom of gloom, but back in 2006, the median sale price was $1,047,000. So it is down. But on the other hand, sales have increased. And the reason also that I think it was is that we all know what happened starting around 2006 and 2007. Things started to, the recession started. Fannie and Freddie, as Ginny said, was a factor. I think after about 3 years, folks started to realize that I have to get in tune with the economic times of today. I can't think about yesterday and the appreciation rates that we used to get. People were saying automatically I should be getting anywhere from 12 to 20% a year. Well, it did take place, and Bernie Madoff did that too, that's correct. But the news for a while in real estate is that it did happen, and they were getting increases, such as this. But then all of a sudden, because of the economic times, it took 3 years. Why me now? You finally live in a home, and now you've added all this up, and all of a sudden you say, look, I'm going to sell my home now in 2009, 2010, but I have to realize it's not going to move unless I price it correctly. So therefore, looking at all the economic indicators and all the factors that we do in putting a house on the market and trying to price it properly, it comes down to, and the adage was, I said only to friends of mine, they would say to me, what's selling for $850 these days? I say everything listed at 1.1. And the reason being is because we're not being realistic. So we have like an A and the B list. You know, you can hope and pray that things are going to get better, but at the same time, people are doing, and the buyers today are very astute. You know, we used to be the gatekeepers of all information about schools and taxes and things of this nature. Well, we do have the internet, and they're very astute, and they do an awful lot of shopping. And when they come in the office, they know as much as we do, or they think they do. So at any rate, this is what's been going on. Now let me move right on to 2011. Things are slightly down, and I believe it may have something to do with consumer confidence at this point. Because year to date, we have 71 sales in Larchmont Mamaroneck, 83 under contract for 154. If we do the equations out, it turns out that we'll probably have maybe around 210 versus the 236. In healthy times, I remember from 1990 to 2005, it did range from 245 to 267 sales. That was the range. In Oriana, had about 23 to 28 every year. In the Larchmont Manor, I'm just picking areas, they had anywhere from 27 to 34. That was it. But it stayed very steady. Well, things have changed. I have no crystal ball. I do know that consumer confidence sometimes is the engine of industry. And I think once that picks up and jobs get created and we're in the right direction, that things will improve. I'm an optimist about this. Why am I an optimist? Because people ask me, they say, have you ever had any other difficult times in real estate in your career? I say to them, none that I can remember, except for 74, 78, 80, 81, 87, 93, and now. But I don't remember those days at all. Not at all. What's coming back? I think that the interest rates have been the lowest since in the last 20 or 30 years, and I think they're going to stay, or they may creep up a little bit. And if they do, I don't think it's going to affect people from buying a home in this area too much. Once it got back up to, as I remember in 80 and 81, it was 18%. And I always love, it's like gasoline prices. I remember going to a party and it was now 11%. Everybody's giving everybody high fives. I got 11, I got 12. And I said to myself, this is amazing. But try to remember that, you know, we have problems, and but I don't think that the newspapers, like I said, are geared to our area. You know, it's like Mark Twain said, I've had a lot of problems in my lifetime, but most of them never took place. Now, I borrowed one more minute from Kerry Sleeper. His mother gave me a half a minute in Vermont, so I'm going to give you what I think. There's about 300 tips in selling a home. I'm just going to give you 10. Real quick. And here they are. The first one is make sure you stage your home correctly to show it better. There's always ways that don't cost a lot of money in order to set your stage. You have to remember you're preparing your home for sale. You live one way. When you put it on the market, you're marketing your home. You're not living it the way you do any longer. Number 9, know about the property disclosure laws, the fair housing laws, the plumbing discharge compliant laws, and the lead-based paint laws. It'll affect your sale by not knowing these particular laws that are on the books. Number 8, capital gains. Understanding this will help you understand your bottom line. It's very important to know these laws. Negotiating. The main issue when your buyer is something that they may have to sell. Prepare how to deal with this issue. Orchestrating the financing agreement with the buyer in this particular category is most important if they have something to sell. Most do, but you have to understand how to work that out. Number 6, pricing your home. Be ready to defend your method of arriving at your price. Buyers will ask and analyze just how you made that decision. Be ready to counter their pricing strategies because they have one. Check out Zillow's website and you'll see the Zillow estimate. It's always lower than the house on the market. Why they do that is another story. Call me, I'll tell you about it. Number 5, environmental issues. Deal with oil tanks and mold first. Then you'll have the pleasure of dealing with termites, radon, asbestos, lead-based paint, UV, and lead in the water. Have fun with that one. Number 4, check with the building department for open permits. You must get C of Os where necessary, and you also must get permits and C of Os for all the enclosures and decks that you built and you never told anybody. That goes on probably in every house in town. I'm always having fun with that. Number 3, locate your deed, title, policy, and survey now. That'll get you ready to have a contract. Number 2, hire a lawyer now. I'm sitting right next to Jane Needy there, and she did not put that one in there. This will so you do not delay in getting a contract to your buyer. When the iron is hot, you want to strike. And number 1, the most important one, is hire a real estate broker to help you understand number 2 through 9.
So, I just want to add one little thing. We're talking about foreclosures and deficits. The whole thing is, yes, prices have sort of have maintained, we're kind of holding steady, but the tide is not rising all boats. The 750 to 1.2, 1.3 range in the Mamaroneck School District is doing well. It's doing well. Above 1.5, the big houses, the $4 million, $5 million houses, let's just say they are not enjoying 10% price increases like they did in 2006. Deficits. Actually, I like to look at it as compromises. What has changed most about buyers? They're not compromising like they used to. When they looked at that little starter house for $1.2 million on Pine Brook or, up on they'd say, oh, well, it's okay, I'll go fix it. I'm going to get 10% more next year and 10%, we'll just spend. Buyers, smart buyers, they're smart about their money and they're smart about their renovations. They're smart about the money they want to spend. And I'll tell you, they are not willing to give up that master bath, the powder room on the first floor that they always wanted. It's just, and so you're seeing houses that you would have thought would have sold very well. They're not. And that sort of brings up the point about short sales. Although Ginny actually sees a technical short sale, correct? Yes. From very personal experience this season, I'm seeing people that bought a house 4 years ago, put $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 into it, and guess what? They're not making that money back. They're not even making the money back that they bought it for. And again, the houses that are probably being most affected by that are those houses that the buyers don't want to compromise on. So if you think you have, Jim was talking about getting your house ready, there are a lot of things that smart buyers want out there, and they're demanding them now. So the other part of that is, fix up the house now. Enjoy it while you can, but that's all I really wanted to say, that what's changing about the market and the perception of the buyers in the market. Throw in the money, throw in the downtown experience, which is really so nice in both Larchmont and Mamaroneck, which, by the way, thank you both. We all sell that in the BIDs. But that's it. Thanks.
Thanks,
Gary.
Gary. Thank you all. A big round of applause for our panel. That was a lot of information. And now, if you all don't mind, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. And is it Randy?
Well, I happen to be in real estate as well, and I totally agree with the two gentlemen. And the buyers today have what I call a crate and barrel mentality. They want to see it just like HGTV. I mean, if it's not granite, it doesn't count. It doesn't even have a countertop. But I do want to ask you both a question I've seen, and I wanted your expert opinion on it. I see a startling increase in inventory in the month of June, in the last 30 days. And I've never seen that at the end of the spring selling cycle. And I'm curious what your comments are.
You're wondering why there's an increase in June.
Last 30 days.
In the last 30 days. You know what happens is that our spring market, I used to tell everybody, they used to ask, when's the spring market start? And I used to say right after the Super Bowl. Right after their kickoff is our kickoff. And the reason being is that a lot of Wall Street money decisions were made in January, we're paying off our credit cards, and all of a sudden people decided, you know what, it's time to move. So what they would do is they would look in February, during the snow, we thought that was spring. In order to find a home, they knew it would take a while, maybe February, March, and April, and they had to close anytime during the summer. There's a small percentage of those that are in New York City and they're looking, and if they have not found a home, they will stop. Why? Because they put their children into private schools, costs an awful lot of money, I don't think it's refundable at a certain date, and so they've stopped looking and they said, you know what, we're going to do this again next year. So all of a sudden it comes around June. Then what happens in June? Oh my God, we have graduations, we have weddings, people are going to camp, and all of a sudden people start to slow the engine down. Now there are those that all of a sudden in June perk up and they say, I shouldn't have been so picky, and I should have negotiated a little bit better, and I shouldn't have made so many lowball offers on so many homes because I don't have one. So they'll come back into the market. We don't really slow down, and we do slow down in June, July and August naturally, but there are those that are still looking, and we hope we're still busy. But that's why there's an inventory increase in June. Things just change. The people are looking in the early part of the year. They've either bought, stopped, and then people have decided maybe it's a good time to put it on. I hear the market's getting better. When they put it on, the buyers are not there. So.
Can you hear me? I don't need to keep in my back.
Speak loudly.
Yeah. Hello, as a social worker and professor of social economics at Fordham and other universities, I've heard today, this morning, about the food pantry and high end. One of the things that I realized in this community, because I've lived in it for over 30 years, and because of my background, that there are a lot of neighborhoods in this community. A lot of different neighborhoods, a lot of different people, a lot of different classes of people, a lot of different races, etc. And I've heard from the food pantry and I've heard from high-end sales. What attention is being paid to people under that 600 or 500,000? How are the rentals, apartment rentals going? The two-family houses going? There's a whole enormous amount of people that are in that category that can't, that understand that there's wealth here, but that's not where we play ball.
I think, Jeremy, you want to
Can I
say something?
To just add a little bit to the picture?
Yes, please.
Jeremy Inkton from Washingtonville Housing Alliance. First, Mary Lee greeted me this morning before my coffee saying, please stand up and say something cogent. I've had my coffee, but my notes, look at those. They are not cogent. Just quickly, Washingtonville Housing Alliance we've got two parts to our business. One is affordable rental housing, and the other is housing assistance. We see slightly different populations in the affordable rental housing and in the housing assistance. So what's going on you've heard on the press, in fact this morning coming in, it said the housing market, there's a glut in the for sale market, and rentals are getting very tight, and it would sort of make sense if people can't afford to buy, that they're fleeing into rentals. It is not the case in the lower third of the Mamaroneck rental market, where there is a glut of properties. partly because the very poorest families left. It is taking 3 to 6 months to turn over an apartment if someone leaves, and rents are down by up to 15% from 2 years ago. So we had one apartment, we started at 1550, 15, 1450, 14. We finally rented it after 6 months at 1350. Very tough environment. For those listening to the debate on renewal of rent control laws, which is a very thorny topic in which I'm completely out of step with my colleagues, I'm not going to have a political conversation here. Landlords are operating in a zero cost increase environment. We took a zero last year. A zero revenue increase, a zero increase on rents. Our costs, however, have marched along with everyone else's. So Washingtonville's budget, we're actually at 2002 levels of expenses. We have cut and cut and cut, and then we cut some more to get through this. And on our properties, we've cut costs and cut costs and cut costs. So we're now actually generating cash year to date on flat rents, which is a pretty good act if you can do it. We pay, by the way, property taxes to the village of over $100,000 a year. So that's the rental side of the market, very slow. On the housing assistance side, we see people when they can't pay their rent, or when they're dislocated because of fire, because of family crisis, all of the terrible things that happen in people's lives. These are people who don't have Section 8. The lucky people have their Section 8 voucher. These are people who don't have Section 8. So who is that population? It's 80% minority single-parent families, women, 80% female-headed minority families, 40% black, 60% Hispanic. That's the face of poverty in this community, except they're the lucky ones, because they are documented and have rights to Social Security and assistance, and are living on a typical family income of somewhere around $22,000 a year. Those are lucky people. Now, what's very interesting, our emergency grants spiked. In the year ending April of 10, we gave away over $30,000 in emergency assistance grants going through that recession. This year, we've dropped down to $12,000. So, and that's made up of people who left. Today, we had a grant from the Summit to do day labor grants, and that over last winter, we didn't see any day labor families coming in for assistance. A lot of people just left. But so at the very low end of the market, people are getting along. We're seeing fewer people. That's the face of poverty. The day laborer budgets, the day laborer families, we just did a couple of housing grants to day laborers. I just said the lucky people are single-parent minority families living on $22,000 a year. Why? Because the day laborer families, when we had the grant from the Summit to do day laborer housing assistance, we took housing family budgets. We have the only file of family budgets for day laborer families. Average budget for the year is $8,000 to $10,000 a year for the people who are doing the landscaping in Scarsdale, plus the mothers doing the daycare on Orienta. It is a scandal. Most of these families, 50%, 60% of them have no money for food. They pay the cell phone, they pay the rent, they have no money for food. Food pantry plus soup kitchen, it is scandalous, it's outrageous. Those people are going back to work. We've just done a couple of rent assistance cases where people had a couple of months of hard time, got behind, and now they're getting hired. So I guess it's good. But the economics of this community, where the landscaping is thriving and you can maintain your $1 million estate because you have all this work done for such a good price, I mean, do think about the human consequences of that. It is really scandalous. So that's the picture we're seeing.
I'll preface my comments by saying I am the eternal optimist. I think that from all the comments from the panel and my Jeremy and everything else, we may be falling into a trap. I think the fact is that the village of Mamaroneck, Larchmont, the town of Mamaroneck, in fact, this entire area is no different from the rest of the country, and that is we're in severe economic straits. We have the unfortunate title of being the highest taxed area in the United States. The question, there's a central theme that I seem to be hearing, and that is basically marketing. Right now we're talking about the current conditions. I think the trap that we all will fall into, we don't plan for the future. It's always cyclical, it goes up and down. As we said before, there are 5 or 6 different periods of time where it was great, it was terrible, and everything else. I think that there's a key parallel that this particular area, while we're the highest or the apex of the highest tax, we're also the apex of a particular characteristic that makes this area great for marketing purposes while people would move here, and that's the volunteer. This area has the blessing of whether it be the Chamber of Commerce, the Food Pantry, Washingtonville Housing Alliance. It's the people that live here that actually get involved and make it a great community to live here, but that's the real key that attracts people to come here. There are also certain pragmatic approaches. As said before, the people that live in New York City, they get married, and then at a certain point they have a couple of kids, and they need to expand. They're not going to spend $3 or $4 million if they come to Mamaroneck or Larchmont and buy a house for $1.5 million. But the key is that you have to plan ahead. You can't just sit and worry about what's happening now. That's going to be a matter of pragmatics, and you're going to do what you have to do now. But you have to look at why there's, as Rich mentioned, there's an empty building at the corner of Mamaroneck Avenue across from the railroad bridge. That's been empty for 2 years. And I can tell you specifically the only reason it's empty is because of parking. Rich and I met with 4 prospective tenants and the owner and came down and went to every time. There's no parking. The village of Mamaroneck, like Larchmont, and is now improving, is suffering from success, believe it or not. And the reason you're suffering from success is that you'll come down at certain times. On Tuesday night, you're not going to find a parking space because you have 3 movies. Friday, Saturday night, perhaps sometime during Sunday, you're not going to find a parking space. It could be controversial how you do it, but the fact of the matter is you have to look and plan. And that's the central thing I'm talking about. You can't get stuck in whether there are foreclosures now or not foreclosures. If you don't plan for the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to be in trouble. And that goes for any place in the United States. If any municipality does not plan to grow and continue to grow, you go the opposite way and you'll end up with empty stores and your houses will go down and everything else. There's a reason people come here. The village of Mamaroneck is the hottest place around. I think one of the keys, it's the most diverse community in all of Westchester County. It's typical of what New York City is. You can get any kind of culture, any kind of food, different neighborhoods and everything else. But I'll go back to it's the volunteer that brings it all together. You have Harbor Festival, you had 25,000 people, the most successful ever in the last 15 years. You have Mamaroneck Shares, which there are people here that will benefit from, and they'll raise, perhaps this year, maybe, instead of last year it was 10 to 12,000, it may raise between 15 and 20,000. It's just giving back to the community, but it comes back to one word, I'll say it's marketing. You have to continue marketing your community and plan ahead.
Thank you.
I would add to the mayor's comments, the schools are a huge draw, and we need to support them. But my job here is simply to comment about what Anna Denoy has said to us from the community services area in terms of the kinds of assistance that she is being asked to give. Our office has seen a 100% increase in the number of applications for federal housing assistance for the period January-June 2010 as compared to the same period 2009. That trend has continued to 2011 as well. Our waiting list for housing assistance has 1,113 applicants. There are 98 families on the list who currently live or work in the Mamaroneck or Larchmont area awaiting assistance. There is more to this. I just wanted to give that basic overall, how important her work is and how much more the volunteerism clearly is important. But there are many other aspects to community and the importance of this as we look at the whole picture. I think it's really very important, and I want to thank Food Pantry and Belinda Lehman for her work as well. This is huge. There are a lot of not-for-profits in this room, and they count for a great deal. As much as I admire real estate, I can tell you, Carrie Sleeper I've known for how many years. It's been a wonderful association.
It's that little dog we shared. That darn little dog.
He was reading. Thank you very much.
Judy. Yes, I just wanted to add another addendum to what Jeremy just said. We just had a meeting on the federal housing lawsuit in Westchester County, and right now there are over 700 names on a waiting list, people who have expressed interest to get into Westchester County affordable housing. And that's just the online list. The other thing I think that is upsetting, frankly, and I think we will see an impact in our food pantries, is that Congress yesterday passed some very strong cuts in WIC funding, Women, Infant, and Children funding, as well as food stamp funding. And I know I was at the food bank for Westchester yesterday, and they are definitely going to feel a lot of pain from this. And that's generally where we see a lot of the food pantries getting their food from, is from the food bank of Westchester. So we have to still be very mindful of what's happening at a federal level as well and how it impacts us here.
Yeah, I'd like to just put the focus on a different group. The percentage of people 60 and over in our county, according to the latest census, is a shade over 20%. 10 years ago, it was about 18.5%. 10 years before that, I don't know exactly what it was, but it was lower, and we all know that that's going to be growing. Also, that household income typically drops by close to 50% from the peak earning years of 40 to 65 to when you get to the group 65 and over. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more hardship in that group, and I think it's important to keep a focus on seniors. And I'm wondering if any of the panelists have, I know the food pantry mentioned about how many older persons, but does anybody else have any thoughts or information on how seniors are weathering this downturn and what the future might hold?
Anyone want to speak to that? Luis?
Seniors, it's a word that has to be redefined. There's a lot of seniors, as we knew them, at 65 that are now staying employed and not retiring as they used to. There's a delay and a redefinition of what the retirement age is going to be. The seniors that we've known in the past, where they go fishing, etc., is gone. They are doing consulting. They are doing whatever work they can do to cut and paste. They are cut and pasting their careers right now in order to keep the money coming in addition to the Social Security. It's a new definition of the different parameters that we define seniors. And when we talk about senior recession, the people that we know, including seniors, the people that I associate with, and I know most, are in a depression. They're not really, we even have to define what is a depression and what's a recession. Because the people that I associate with are, the common terminology relates more to a depression.
The sad part about the seniors and the dependency on Social Security is that beyond a lot of the federal cuts to programs like ours, it's also programs like Medicaid, Medicare, and also their, the government sets the poverty line, but the reality is something different. So for seniors, there is a lot of struggle with if they're staying in their home, and I know at Home on the Sound is involved to help that. But a lot of seniors, are really struggling with having that information, what to do. If they own a property, even if it's a co-op, they are not eligible for any social services, which they should be entitled to in any event. And it's really sad. And so that's why it's important that as a neighborhood, we always have an awareness of what's going on with all aspects in every part of our community. So the panel doesn't work in isolation. Just like our clients don't have a need in isolation. If it's a housing issue, they're sure going to need food. They're sure going to need more information. They're going to need help for their children or help for their elderly.
organization, and it's wonderful to be in this forum and to know that all organizations are here. We must also all work in a collaborative manner.
Yeah, very quickly, I think this gentleman and Louise hit it right on the head. Actually, as part of my previous comments, I forgot to mention. The greatest impact that we have, particularly on group 65 and older senior citizens, is the real estate-based tax. That's the revenue that we all depend upon, and that's what's killing us, and that's what affects your tax market. Whether it be the Village of Mamaroneck or the town of Larchmont or anything else, you have to start looking for other revenues that are not real estate-based tax.
One of the most aggressive taxes there is.
That's correct. It has to be a user tax. And even though the Village of Mamaroneck, I can speak personally for Rich and everybody else on that board, is that you look for revenue, but it's nothing but another hidden tax. If you raise the meters or you raise a use, it's still a tax, whatever it is. If you have a user-based revenue, such as parking, where a good 40 to 50% is estimated people who come to the Village of Mamaroneck are not relatives. Not residents in the Village of Mamaroneck. So that helps keep the tax base at a certain level, because what's going to happen is getting to the point where, it's a catch-22, because the real kicker is the volunteers that save money. I'll give one example, I use it all the time. The volunteer fire department in the Village of Mamaroneck cost the Village of Mamaroneck, including a 5-year capital improvement plan for new fire engines, approximately $700,000 a year. If you look at the town of Mamaroneck, not picking on them, or Rybrook or Portchester, for the same level or even less, you're talking about $1 to $2 and sometimes $3 million a year. If you don't keep those people that volunteer in the Village of Mamaroneck, you're going to lose that. And the irony is your taxes are going up maybe 10 to 12% just to cover what you have. We have to start thinking on a business level of how to increase revenues that aren't based on real estate tax. I know there's a great move out. People want a 10% flat tax, which is great, and that's what they're talking about for schools. I don't know how realistic it is. I don't think it'll ever pass, even though it's probably the most common. So it comes back to you have to start running these municipalities like a business. And the real trick is, how do you do it without changing the character, which is the real reason why people live here. Village of Mamaroneck, quote, the jewel is Harbor Island. Harbor Island is probably the most underutilized area in the Village of Mamaroneck that has the potential to bring revenue in. But what do you do without changing the character of not only the Village of Mamaroneck, but Harbor Island? But it's there and you can do it. What you have to do is start talking to each other. The real shame in this area is that I would like to see, and get rid of, in all due respect to myself and everybody else, Republican and Democratic parties. Because people, like the rest of this country, talk at each other and to each other. You have to get groups like the Summit and other groups to start talking about what's best for the village or the town or the village of Larchmont. It's a matter of survival.
I wanted to answer about the senior citizen population, what you were discussing, the 65 and older, because there have been some changes this year in mortgage products for that sector of the population. Many of you have probably heard of a reverse mortgage. Are you familiar with that, how that works? Basically, you're borrowing against the equity in your home, and you don't have to make a mortgage payment going forward. The FHA has taken over all of the reverse mortgage products. They are federally insuring them, and there was a big push at the beginning of 2011 for these new FHA products. I'll tell you, I'm an affiliate of Wells Fargo. I work for an affiliate of Wells Fargo, so they're one of my parent companies. Wells Fargo has just removed themselves from this market for this new product that was rolled out this year. So I'm not even exactly sure if it's that it was underutilized or it's not performing, but we are, we're seeing options for that sector actually narrowing. And I'm not sure who's going to pick up the slack there. But I'm not exactly sure why the FHA would have decided to do this big rollout and hike it back so quickly. But it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to use this product going forward. There is still a reverse product available, but it's not going to be as inexpensive as they had discussed. Those were the changes that were made, because it used to cost a lot of money to get one of these. But it helped people who were on a fixed income be able to sustain living in their homes. So that's going to be a change we're going to need to stay on top of and see what we're going to do for these seniors in keeping them in their homes.
One change. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm going to ask this question really quickly. Now, for people who are having difficulty selling their houses, are they renting them? And by the way, for every problem there's a solution. For people who need, okay, they're senior citizens who might stay in their house, by the way, if they could use it as a rental for people who are not able to afford other places. In other words, some young, healthy people could come into the senior's house, could be service in kind. I mean, you can match two problems together for a solution, okay? But I don't know who would do it. But I'm just asking for people who can't sell their houses, what is the law, what is the story on renting those houses, short or long term? I mean, I've said a lot of things open-ended, but anyway. And also, you can use Harbor Island for fees for parking.
Real quick to answer that, I don't know, you probably run into two-family zoning problems right after that.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
You might run into two zoning problems, you may have to change that around. I agree with you, there's always a solution.
And another problem.
Yeah, I'm always one to try to find a solution. I always believe we have low hurdles, we can get over it together. I will say about the commercial buildings, and I understand the parking, and Norm, you're absolutely correct about parking, 100%. But there are an awful lot of buildings, taxpayer buildings, small ones, that are vacant. And if there's any landlords in the room, they'll probably want to shoot me. But they also have to get realistic when I was talking about economic times of today. I own a building in Larchmont, and I am now getting 33% less starting last year than I was getting the year before. Why? I have a tenant, and they're taking care of the building. And I have to realize that this is what the money is that I can get per square footage, period, in Larchmont. And the building is looking good, and the flag is waving out front, and everybody's happy. And they're also an asset to the community in the building, and it helps all of us. And landlords have to become more realistic. When I see an empty building, and I go, why? Why? I know they haven't updated it as far as computers and electricity and that kind of thing to put your modems in, or whatever the word is. But that's not the issue. The issue is today's economics, and you have to deal with it. That's all.
Thank you. I have just a footnote to the landlord situation in Larchmont. I've spent a lot of time talking to some of the landlords. A lot of the feedback that I've gotten from some of the empty storefronts is that a lot of the revenue is coming from the apartments above. And to upgrade the existing empty storefront is just not economically feasible for the people. There's been a lot of interest in some buildings, and the interest is that we'll just let it sit for a while empty because the revenue is coming from the apartments upstairs.
That's the problem.
So
Excellent.
it's very frustrating as a business community to hear that.
Just a quick comment about the economy and taxes, and as well as the rental situation. And this may explain part of the reason why we don't have as many foreclosures. A lot of people who can't afford a house right now because of the economy or because of their job situation, you may have renting a single-family home rather than buying it. I know several in my neighborhood up in Ossining, the people couldn't sell the house. They're renting to maintain their mortgage and not have the house foreclosed on. So that's probably true here too. And then we have the double whammy because of the economy and because of the pension. The New York State pension lost almost 35% of value because of the economy. And so the state has increased our costs for pension so that it's 10% of our budget. So with our big five, what I mentioned before, sales tax, mortgage tax, building permits, interest income, and parking meters, we've seen a 5% gap in our budget of $1.5 million every year in lost recurring revenues. With the $3 million from the pension that we didn't have 10 years before, there was nothing. The economy was doing so great, the investments of the pension system were doing so great, local governments were paying nothing. That's $4.5 million on our total budget now that we're paying, that we either lost revenue or paying now we didn't have to pay 10 years ago.
Thank you. And I just want to say we try to get people out of here as close to 9 as possible because everybody wants to get to work. I know that. And once again, our panel has sparked as many conversations and issues as I think you've solved for us, which is why we invite you all to come. So I just want to say thank you all very much for coming, and thank you all very much for coming. And I don't know if Elaine, you want to sum up? But everybody have a wonderful summer, and we'll see you back in September.
Thank you.
Thank you.